For the Diocese of Cyprus and the Gulf, 2014 has been a year of firsts. Our first woman parish priest, Wendy Hoff, came to Kyrenia in April.
The Diocese of Cyprus and the Gulf has always been keen on opening ordination both to women and to men. And we've come to a very good arrangement with the rest of our Anglican province. And people are experiencing all the blessings that flow from having a good appointment.
Not so long ago we had a drinks evening here and we invited the Speaker of the House, a woman who's also a presidential candidate, and we exchanged sort of smiling, whispered talks about how they think the woman can't be in a position of responsibility here. The Deputy High Justice is a woman here in the north of Cyprus. It's people sometimes, I don't want to say they exaggerate, but they inflate their ideas about this gender. Some people create problems where there are actually none.
And he's brought a very great deal of vivacity. She loves the island of Cyprus. She's really committed to ministry to the wider community as well as the gathered community, and altogether it's good news in Kyrenia.
I'm a real people person. I love people, to build relationships and to get to know people and what they're doing in their lives. There are some fascinating people who have ended up here for all sorts of reasons, so their journeys.
Not everyone was convinced at first that a woman chaplain was a great idea, but parishioner Chris Gibson has certainly been won over.
The church is changing, and the church is changing for the better. The acceptance in the local community is far greater than it has ever been. I've been here 12 years, and the beginnings of an integration into a community are more positive, are better than I have ever seen them.
It has been primarily a church of retired expats, but and I'm not ageist, and I talked about that yesterday in my sermon actually, the experience and the wisdom of older people is fantastic. However, we have universities and schools here. There is no reason on earth why we need to be one-dimensional.
Meeting British Legion officers and the British High Commissioner for a short service at the British Cemetery is one example of the link she's fostering.
My first two churches were embassy churches. We were very used to ambassadors and all sorts of other dignitaries, some royalty. That's never been an issue for me. Even in Bristol, St Mary Redcliffe was a very civic church with lots of responsibilities to the wider community.
Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Another ministerial first was being celebrated in Bahrain. Our first stipendiary curate, John Lavelle.
Ordaining John Lavelle in Bahrain Cathedral was a real delight. John is serving a stipendiary curacy, and already in his deacon's year he's saying that he is hugely enriched by getting deeply dug into the worshipping and the social life of a particular given congregation.
It's a very good community at the cathedral itself, really good fellowship. I think it's representative of most of the chaplaincies of the Gulf in terms of the makeup of the congregation. The dean, of course, Chris Butt, is a wonderful pastor, and he has a lot of experience. And I'm able to work very closely with him every day, which is really good.
A visit to the local craft centre gives John an opportunity to develop a new interest.
I'm also very interested in interfaith dialogue, and I've already, in the short time I've been here, I've formed a lot of relationships with Bahrainis, and the Bahrainis seem very open to talking about faith, and they're interested in Christianity. They come to the services more than I've witnessed in other Gulf countries. Of course, well, being from the church, I'm always interested in faith too. So how is your work in the Girls' Dream related to our faith or to God?
For me, God is nature, God is everywhere, okay? And whatever we are doing, we are part of nature. God created us to integrate together.
John has also taken an interest in the Seafarers Centre and the work of local chaplain Stephen Thanapol.
What's your name?
My name is Rodney Carvalho. I'm from India.
Oh yeah, which city?
It is Goa.
Oh, that's the most famous port, right?
John hosts a house group at his new home.
All that's downloaded and edited
We enjoy coming together and having the fellowship of sharing a meal. And we've also had some very serious discussions and in time of prayer together, supporting one another in that way.
And of course, there's the everyday business of pastoral liturgical ministry to master.
His passion for social justice and his involvement with the Ecumenical Conference for Charity, which is the social arm of the church. And just his sheer breadth of background, his immersion in Gulf culture has meant that he's felt at ease here, I think, very quickly.
In Famagusta, we welcomed our first specifically dedicated student lay chaplain. Harry Ching has come from Hong Kong to serve as a reader this diverse and predominantly African congregation.
Feels very different, but I've done pioneering work before when I was in London, a completely new post, and also it's a very different atmosphere to what I used to. The student I look after have a very different background, and it's all new, but I'm actually very open to get to know them more. I think as I'm learning little by little, I get to know them a bit more, and at the same time they being more frank towards their concerns and the needs. And I think most important is to be there for them, to allow time for them to come to me and to have time for them to be together, the fellowship. Coming from my own background, the more liberal Catholic background with very traditional hymns, to very modern and contemporary songs of today, I think it also represents diversity of the Anglican Union. It also represent the depth of our theology, be able to absorb all forms of Christian faith, that be able to serve the best of our students.
Another notable appointment was that of full-time Archdeacon in the Gulf.
Having Bill Schwartz as full-time Archdeacon in the Gulf is something that I've longed for from the moment that I arrived in the diocese, precisely because the area of his archdeaconry is so huge. It covers multiple countries, it covers big distances, and the encouragement and the wisdom, the technical and the spiritual gifts that he's able to bring to bear when he sits with congregations and church councils and clergy, inestimable benefit.
Aden comes to mind very quickly because we have a new priest there, and part of what I need to do is help him with the cultural adaptation and things like that, help him learn the history of the ministry there, and at the same time we're switching the whole emphasis in the medical work, which started off with general medical care, and then we picked up eye care, and quite naturally over the years the eye care has actually become much more important, so we're phasing out the general care and expanding the eye care, and that has a lot of administrative implications, and need to go and work with the staff and planning and budgeting, and that's very difficult to do over email and telephone. So to be able to go and spend some time there is really, really good.
Our first salaried full-time finance officer, Evangelia Yoyakaki, joined us in May.
The central admin of the Diocese of Cyprus and the Gulf has always been pretty lean, and it became very obvious to us that just to sustain the operation of the diocese and to get added value from all the things that the diocese is able to bring, we needed an experienced professional at home on the island of Cyprus and its culture and world and financial life, but also somebody experienced in dealing with Gulf countries. And Evangelia brings precisely that background.
It's been a very interesting experience. As you said, I didn't know much about the Anglican Church, and I'm beginning to learn slowly but surely, and about the organization in general, how it works, how the people work with each other, and what kind of attitude and climate there is generally. I'm pleasantly surprised. People are mostly helpful and offering offering assistance in anything that one might need. The girls in the office have been great in explaining to me a lot of things that would have taken me years to learn otherwise.
Canon Paul Mabry is the first diocesan-funded spirituality coordinator. His Darinia congregation is about to take up the offer of a new home at St Fenurius Church.
Most heartening thing, I would say, is the desire among the people that I've met to deepen their spiritual lives. A mixture of kind of training events for both readers and clergy, opportunities to spend days and half days with lay people, weeks of prayer, as well as preparing the diocesan prayer guide and supporting individuals on a one-to-one basis.
Finishing the Anglican Centre in Doha with its showpiece Church of the Epiphany has been a real delight. It was completed, celebrations were fervent, and huge numbers of people, tens of thousands of people, worshipped there in the Anglican Centre, not only, of course, our own Anglican congregation, but many other Christians who would otherwise have no chance of being permitted to worship legally.
On Friday, we have 16,190 people who turns for various services. The service timing starts from 6 o'clock in the morning and goes up to 10 in the night. And there are 102 services conducted on every Friday, 102 services. Anglican Church, actually they look at Anglican Church as the very representative of Christian community here, especially for the Protestant community. And Anglican Church is the facilitator between the government and for the Christian community here. We stand as a catalyst.
It's Friday morning in Kuwait, and the Reverend Harrison Chinikuma begins his day with a service in English at Ahmadi. Another location, another service. This time Harrison leads the service in Urdu. But there's one more congregation yet, the one that worships in Mandarin.
Though we can't provide worship in the Anglican tradition in every single language, nevertheless, when it's possible to do so, it's a delight to see it, and it reminds us that English is only one language among many, and to see people's delight in worshipping in their own mother tongue is huge. Chinese worshippers in the chaplaincy of St Paul, Kuwait, are mostly people who've come in from no previous particular religious background. So the whole concept of expressing faith in God is new and thrilling.
We always feel like we have no ability to do all the things to leading congregation and to want to the church green and to bring more people to come in Christ. But whatever, how difficult when we start until now, we see how Christ will leading us and bring the people coming to the church. This is what's very amazing and excited.
Arrived in Kuwait about in January 2014. So I'm very grateful that I've been introduced to this congregation. So I enjoyed to be part of the congregation, and currently I'm members of the Chinese committee, and as well as members of the PCC.
我感觉当我进入到教会以后，尤其在我受洗以后，
After I baptized, I found a sense belonging to God. I have faith and hope in my life, and God is so near to me.
工作和家庭有了很大的变化，我最大的感受就是觉得我灵魂上有了归属。
Many chaplaincies have taken part in the Remembering Tree project, a new idea for this year suggested by Angela Merry from Bahrain. How does she think it went?
I am overwhelmed. It's been a remarkable result of teamwork, togetherness amongst many parishes in the diocese. I hadn't expected so many squares to be created. For instance, in Dorinia, I know that amongst several churches there, 1,500 squares have been produced, several hundred in Limassol, the same in Larnaca, Bahrain, and other parts of the diocese. The one thing which I hadn't expected to be possible is that we would be able to donate 21 blankets to an orphanage in Baghdad. And there are 21 young people who are resident. All of them are profoundly handicapped. They are aged between 3 and teenagers. And so, as this is very much linked with St. George's Church in Baghdad, it seemed a natural fit.
Every single time I go to Iraq, I'm moved enormously. And recently I was able to go to the congregation there and install Faiz Jerjis, who has been the assistant priest, as the parish priest. The people really rejoiced when Faiz, an Iraqi, one of their own, became the parish priest, and that was a real highlight. 40th anniversary year is a time to take stock, and I think what I would see probably over all that time, but certainly I've been able to rejoice recently in seeing a much greater sense of solidarity among and between and in most congregations, so that the concept of diocese becomes real, not as an administrative structure, but as something that is more than the sum of its parts. My prayer for the diocese in the anniversary year is that we would relax into worshipping God and serving Him in Jesus Christ.